All right, I read through the rough transcript of the call between Trump and the new Ukrainian president, and a few things struck me. Number one, there's not a single person in Washington with any experience in government, not one, who really believes the president was trying to use the Ukrainian government to rig the 2020 election. I don't see how anyone in his or her right mind could legitimately say there's an impeachable offense in this transcript. In the conversation, Trump congratulated Volodymyr Zelensky on his parliamentary win and said the U.S. would continue to support Ukraine, but he was frustrated that the EU isn't doing more. Zelensky agreed, saying the European Union should be our biggest partner, but technically the United States is a much bigger partner. We're ready to continue to cooperate for the next step. Specifically, we're almost ready to buy more javelins from the United States for defense purposes. Then the president responds, I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike, the server, they say Ukraine has it. I would like to have the Attorney General call you or your people, and I would like you to get to the bottom of it. Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it if that's possible. Zelensky then interjected that one of his assistants had already met with Giuliani and that the investigation was very important for him as well, adding, I guarantee that all the investigations will be done openly and candidly. That I can assure you. Okay, handling investigations openly and candidly. That sounds like an evil plot to me. How nefarious of them. There is no quid pro quo, and the president never once even hinted that Ukrainian aid would be withheld if a further investigation by them wasn't done. At this point, I think it's pretty obvious that the Democrats overplayed their hand big time. They based their impeachment move on a whistleblower who didn't even hear the conversation and who grossly exaggerated what happened in it. Which brings me to point number two. The president not only did nothing wrong, he went above and beyond his duty to his office, hoping to discover what happened in the lead up to the 2016 election so it never happens to another president again. As we know, the Biden story is about far more than just Hunter Biden making big money in Ukraine while Daddy was setting Ukraine policy.
I fully support transparency on the so-called whistleblower information, but also insist on transparency from Joe Biden and his son Hunter on the millions of dollars that have been quickly and easily taken out of Ukraine and China.
If foreign governments were approached to assist in digging up dirt on Trump in the lead up to 2016, that is a big problem. And Trump's right. We need to get to the bottom of any election tampering. I thought the Democrats wanted to stop election meddling by foreign governments. Which takes us to point number three. Democrats don't really care about preventing government corruption. Any Democrat claiming to be interested in corruption should be outraged by the fact that Biden himself bragged on camera about dangling a foreign aid carrot to get a prosecutor fired, when that prosecutor was involved in investigating a company paying his son boatloads of cash. Not a single Democrat will even concede that Biden's actions, at the very least, were an obvious conflict of interest is extremely telling.
Look, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of got fired.
Number four. If President Trump wanted to pressure Ukraine to hurt Biden with the intent on improving his own re-election chances, there were 100 better ways to do it. By the way, ways that wouldn't involve speaking to the Ukrainian president on the phone when he knows that the call is monitored and memorialized by intelligence staffers. And while the Democrats insist Trump was pressuring Ukraine to investigate Biden, what does the Ukrainian president himself say about it?
We had, I think, good phone call. It was normal. We spoke about many things, and so I think, and you read it, that nobody pushed me. Yes.
Nobody pushed him. So the principal himself, adamant, no pressure from Trump, the call was normal, nothing out of the ordinary. So are the impeachment Dems saying that Zelensky here on camera is lying? So it's a Trump-Ukrainian conspiracy in plain sight. Now, does all this kind of sound familiar to any of you? Phony collusion claims in 2017, phony pressure claims now. Number 5, there are no moderates left in the Democrat Party. This point is beyond debate. During the midterms, swing district Democrats claimed they were anxious to work with the president. Now they are the tips of the impeachment spear.
The quid pro quo element doesn't need to be there for this to be a crime.
This was a line that was crossed for the national security Dems and something that we thought the caucus needed to move on.
While it may be a controversial issue, when you look at the facts and you look at this specific instance, I think this is a total game changer.
It's a game changer for the Democrat Party. They're all Ilhan Omar now. When they're up for re-election next year, and they insist, they're moderates who just want government to work again. Don't believe them. They must be voted out of office for violating their pledge to be more bipartisan. Number 6, Democrat leadership has totally given up on governing. Now, time and again, Trump has beaten them at their own game. We've seen it. And I'm beginning to think it's made them, they're just losing it day after day. They're totally delusional. You know the lunatic hobos who blurt out crazy things and they zigzag in the middle of a crowded intersection? Well, Adam Schiff kind of sounded like that today.
What those notes reflect is a classic mafia-like shakedown of a foreign leader. This is how a mafia boss talks. Like any mafia boss, the president didn't need to say, "That's a nice country you have. It'd be a shame if something happened to it."
The man doesn't even know The Godfather, okay? He doesn't even know the movie. He doesn't even know what a shakedown is. I still remember, by the way, when the Democrats did tell us that they were going to work on health care and infrastructure, they were going to take on the drug companies. They're not going to do any of that. Which takes us to my 7th and final point. It's biblical here. All right, Democrats are possessed with anti-Trump rage. Maybe there needs to be an exorcism. They are infuriated that Mueller let them down, that Trump has beaten them pretty much at every turn. They're obsessed with punishing him and anyone who works for him, anyone who is close to him. Think about it. Does leadership give impassioned press conferences on their plans for reining in, government waste and fraud and abuse or improving the economy? No, they save all their emotion in bogus investigations and angry denunciations of anyone associated with this president. The polls are clear. This is not what Americans want. These representatives were not sent to Washington to frustrate the people's will. They were sent to Washington to do the people's will. And at this point, Trump's doing that all on his own. Soon, though, it's going to turn to the people. They'll have their say. They're going to let Washington know what it thinks about the job they've done. And properly framed, the election will be a choice between the Democrats' revenge and resist-style politics or the president's results. And unfortunately for Pelosi and Schiff, you can't impeach your own constituents. And that's the angle.